Have you ever been called cold, intimidating, too complicated to deal with? Good. Because what they're really saying, without knowing it, is that your mind cannot be bought, cannot be rushed, and absolutely cannot be controlled. And today, we're going to talk about why that is the most powerful thing about you. Let's start with something most people will never hear. Being difficult is not a personality flaw. It is a psychological fortress. There is a concept in cognitive science called cognitive resistance. And no, it's not stubbornness. It's not ego. It is your brain's built-in refusal to accept an idea simply because everyone else has accepted it. It is the mental equivalent of an immune system. And just like a strong immune system, most people don't notice it until someone tries to infect them with something toxic. Think about the last time you were in a room, a meeting, a family gathering, a group chat, where everyone was nodding along to something that made absolutely no sense. And you were the one who said, out loud or at least in your head, "Wait, that doesn't add up." That moment of friction, that discomfort you caused, that wasn't you being difficult. That was your brain doing its job while everyone else had turned theirs off. In psychology, this connects directly to something called the locus of control. People who are easily manipulated tend to have what's called an external locus. They believe their lives are shaped by other people's opinions, by luck, by circumstances outside themselves. They are, in the most literal sense, waiting to be told what to think. You're not built that way. You operate from an internal locus. You decide, you evaluate, you question. And to someone who needs blind obedience, that is genuinely terrifying. A person who asks why before they say yes is the natural enemy of anyone who depends on unquestioned compliance. So if someone has ever called you intimidating, I want you to hear that differently from now on. They weren't describing a flaw. They were describing a threat to their ability to control the narrative, to manipulate the room, to move you like a chess piece. Now, let's get specific. Because there are 5 distinct signs that your brain is actually wired to resist manipulation, and most people who have them have never had them named out loud. The first sign, your brain demands logic before it agrees to anything. This isn't a choice you make, it's a processing requirement. When someone tells you, "Just trust me," or "Do it because I said so," or "Everyone else is doing it," your brain doesn't compute that as a valid input. It flags it as incomplete. It refuses to close the loop until there is a reason, a structure, a coherent why behind the request. This is devastating for manipulators. Their most powerful tools are emotional urgency, social pressure, and confusion. Decide now, or lose the opportunity forever. Everyone thinks you're being unreasonable. You're overthinking it. But here's the thing. Pressure doesn't accelerate your decision-making. It slows it down. The harder someone pushes, the more suspicious you become. The more they rush you, the more you pump the brakes. You can't be steamrolled because your brain treats urgency as a red flag, not a green light. The second sign, you have an almost eerie ability to detect patterns, especially the broken ones. You know that feeling when you meet someone that everyone else finds absolutely charming and you can't explain it, but something is off. That's not paranoia. That is your subconscious running a background program at a speed your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. Your brain cross-references. It compares what people say to what they do. It tracks consistency across time. When someone tells you, "I respect you," but continuously talks over you, your brain doesn't explain that away. It logs it. Discrepancy registered. Trust reduced. Psychologists call the discomfort of conflicting information cognitive dissonance. Most people resolve it by self-deceiving. He only yelled because he was stressed. She's actually sweet, once you know her. The dissonance is too uncomfortable, so the brain rewrites reality to match the emotion. You don't do that. You let the data speak. And that makes you particularly immune to one of the oldest manipulation tactics in existence, love bombing. For those who don't know, love bombing is when someone overwhelms you with affection, attention, and flattery, especially early in a relationship, in order to hook you emotionally before the real dynamic reveals itself. While other people get intoxicated by the attention, your brain is running a quiet but relentless analysis. This level of intensity doesn't match the amount of time we've actually known each other. The math doesn't work. Something is being manufactured here. You see the flaw in the matrix before the movie even starts. The third sign. Your peace of mind is not for sale. We live in a culture that has almost criminalized the word no. Saying no is considered selfish. Setting limits is called being cold. Protecting your energy is labeled antisocial. But you have developed something rare and almost countercultural. The ability to say no without guilt, without a 12-paragraph explanation, without feeling like you owe the world an apology for having limits. Here's the psychological truth behind this. Your energy is a finite resource. You know that, and you've stopped pretending otherwise. While other people are setting themselves on fire to keep everyone else warm, burning through their own mental health, their own values, their own identity, you have drawn clear lines, not because you're cold, not because you don't care, but because you understand that a person who loses themselves in the process of keeping others comfortable isn't actually helping anyone, they're just slowly disappearing. When something is unfair, you say so. When something doesn't serve you, you decline. Without drama, without 1,000 justifications. And that quiet, unshakable boundary is one of the most powerful things a human being can project. The fourth sign. Your most devastating weapon is your silence. This one is worth sitting with for a moment. Manipulators operate on a very simple equation. Action causes reaction. If they accuse you, they expect you to defend yourself frantically. If they insult you, they expect you to escalate emotionally. If they gaslight you, telling you that you're crazy, that you're overreacting, that you imagined it, they expect you to crumble into self-doubt. What they need from you is what psychologists call emotional supply. Your anger, your tears, your desperate need to be understood. That emotional reaction is the fuel they run on. It confirms their power over you. But you apply something that therapists and researchers actually have a name for: the grey rock method. When provoked instead of engaging, you become completely unremarkable, emotionally neutral, flat, calm, as interesting and reactive as a grey rock on the side of the road. Imagine the scene. Someone tries to make you feel guilty for a decision you made. They use shame, they use manipulation, they maybe even question your character. And instead of launching into a defense, you look at them steadily and say, "I understand you see it that way. I disagree." And then, nothing. Silence. You give them nothing to work with. Without the emotional reaction they came for, they have nothing. The script breaks. They're left performing for an empty theatre. And that leads us to the fifth sign, the one that is the foundation of everything else. Your stability doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. This is the root of it all. The reason you are genuinely, structurally resistant to manipulation is because the thing manipulators most rely on, your fear of rejection, your need for validation, your terror of being alone, either doesn't exist in you or you have. Learn to manage it in a way that makes it irrelevant. The most important psychological principle here is this: autonomy over approval. Most people will compromise their values, their principles, even their perception of reality, just to keep someone from leaving. The threat of abandonment is so powerful that people reshape themselves entirely to avoid it. And manipulators know this. They weaponize it constantly. If you loved me, you'd do this. I guess I'll just leave then. No one else would put up with you. But when someone says that to you, your brain doesn't panic. It doesn't scramble for a way to keep them. It runs a quiet, clear calculation. If the price of your presence is my freedom, then I cannot afford you. That realization, that some things are worth being alone for, makes you essentially invincible to emotional coercion. Now, I want to give you something practical, because these traits are powerful, but unexamined power can become isolation. So here is what I call the active defense protocol. 3 rules to keep your natural resistance sharp without letting it cut you off from genuine connection. Rule 1. Time. is your shield. Never respond to anything important in the heat of the moment. Manipulators love urgency. Decide right now. It's now or never. I need an answer immediately. Your default response is always, I'm going to think about it and get back to you. That pause, that deliberate gap, dismantles the spell entirely. Urgency is manufactured to prevent you from thinking clearly. Time restores your clarity. Rule 2. Less is more. Stop over-explaining yourself. When you give 10 reasons for your decision, you hand the other person 10 angles to attack, debate, and slowly dismantle. No is a complete sentence. That doesn't work for me is a full explanation. Every word you add beyond that is a vulnerability. The less you justify, the less ammunition they have. Rule 3. Trust the signal in your body. That tightness in your chest when something feels off. That subtle unease when someone is being suspiciously kind. That quiet alarm when the story doesn't quite add up. That is not anxiety. That is not paranoia. That is your nervous system processing social data at a speed your analytical mind hasn't processed yet. It is biological intelligence. Honor it. Here's what I want to leave you with. In a world that constantly rewards compliance, that applauds people for making themselves smaller, for agreeing faster, for needing less and giving more, your refusal to do any of that is quietly radical. Being labeled difficult by someone who wanted you to be easy is not an insult. It is a review, and it is a 5-star one. Because what they're really telling you is, I couldn't move you, I couldn't confuse you, I couldn't get you to betray yourself for my comfort. In a world full of people performing agreeableness they don't feel, having a mind that refuses to be rented out, a spine that doesn't bend under social pressure, and a sense of self that doesn't evaporate when someone disapproves of you. That is not a flaw to apologize for. That is freedom. And the price of that freedom? Sometimes being called difficult. It's the cheapest price imaginable.